Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we are going to be looking at HARKing.
HARKing.
Yeah, HARKing. It stands for Hypothesizing After the Results Are Known, and we're going to be looking at a paper all about it today that uses simulations.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this. Isn't that like kind of bad practice?
It can be, yeah, it can be a little bit shady, but honestly, it's more common than you think, and that's why I thought it would be a great topic for a deep dive.
Hmm.
And this isn't just some obscure thing that academics are arguing about,
Yeah.
has real implications like in psychology and management and stuff.
Oh wow. Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
Yeah. So before we get too far into it, can you maybe just kind of like explain to our listeners exactly what harking is?
So like imagine you're reading a detective novel.
Okay.
And instead of like starting with clues and working towards who did it, the detective just like picks who they think is guilty
Uh-huh.
and then just finds clues to fit that theory, so they're not really doing a good job.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so they're starting at the end and working back.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, that's sneaky. So the paper that we're looking at today, it actually lays out 4 different types of harking, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like a whole taxonomy.
Yeah. So what are they?
Okay, so the first one is called hypothesis proliferation, which is just like, adding more and more hypotheses after you already saw the data.
Oh, so you can keep moving the goalpost.
Exactly. And then there's tharking.
Harking.
Yeah, so tharking, it stands for transparently harking, so it's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Where researchers are upfront about, changing their hypotheses after looking at the data.
Okay, so transparency is key. What about the other 2?
Right. Well, we have cherry picking, which is basically what it sounds like. Choosing the best results out of all of the ones you got.
Right.
And then there's question trolling, which is definitely the worst one.
Yeah, that one sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, it's like a researcher going on a fishing expedition with their data, and then they just look for any little thing, any correlation that's significant, and they just build a story around that after the fact.
Oh, wow. So it's like they don't even have a question in mind when they start. They just like look at the data until they find something.
Exactly. And that's where things get really bad because according to the simulation, question trolling can lead to massive biases, especially when researchers are dealing with big data sets.
Yeah, especially when the true effect is small.
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, so why should we care about this? Like, give us the so what?
Well, I mean, think about it. Like, companies, they make decisions. Policymakers, they use this research to implement policy. And just regular people, we use this research to make decisions and, like, to form our worldview.
Yeah, totally.
So if the research is all skewed, then all of our decisions are going to be skewed too.
Right. And then all of a sudden the foundations of our society are a little bit shaky.
Exactly. Like, imagine a company and they're going to, like, completely overhaul their marketing based on this research that shows, like, a huge correlation between what customers want and their behavior.
Uh-huh.
And then it turns out that research was totally harked.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and so the company wastes all this money on a campaign that fails.
Right, because it's based on bad data. Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's actually get into this simulation study now. So how do they actually go about measuring the impact of these different types of harking?
So they used a ton of data from previous studies to make their simulations super realistic.
Okay.
And they mostly focused on cherry picking and question trolling, since those are the 2 worst offenders.
Yeah, and out of those 2, which one was worse?
Well, cherry picking actually isn't that bad.
Really?
Yeah, the impact was generally really small, especially if the sample sizes were large.
Okay.
The paper compares it to, like, choosing the best picture out of, like, a bunch of similar photos.
Yeah.
So it's like you might end up with a slightly better picture, but it doesn't change what's actually in the photo.
All right, so maybe not ideal, but not a complete disaster either.
Yeah, exactly. But question trolling, on the other hand, that was a whole different story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with question trolling, like, you can take a really weak correlation and make it look way stronger than it actually is.
Oh, no.
Like, the paper gives this example of research on, like, top management teams and how their characteristics impact the company's performance.
Okay.
Usually those correlations are, like, pretty small, like 0.1 or something.
Uh-huh.
But then with question trolling, like, they could easily, like, boost it up to 0.2.
So they could double it.
Yeah, and make it look like a really important relationship when it's actually not.
Oh, wow. That's really scary. Like, I'm starting to think about all the research that's out there and, like, how much of it can we trust?
Yeah, it's definitely it's something to think about. And the thing is that sometimes this can happen even if the researcher doesn't mean to do it.
Wait, so you're saying like they could be arting without even realizing it?
Yeah, it can totally happen. Like, there are some statistical methods that, like, they're fine, but they can be misused to act hoc.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so like stepwise regression.
Stepwise regression.
Yeah, it's a way to build a statistical model by adding or removing variables until you get like the best fit.
Okay.
So it's kind of like trying on different clothes until you find the one that looks the best.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
But like the thing is, you could find an outfit that looks great, but it doesn't actually like fit well, and it'll fall apart after you wear it a couple of times.
Right.
And it's the same thing with stepwise regression. Like, you could end up with a model that looks really good, but it doesn't actually show the real relationships in the data.
So you're kind of like forcing the model to tell the story you want it to tell.
Yeah, exactly. And another example is modifying structural equation models, or SEMs.
Okay.
Researchers sometimes like tweak those after they get the initial results, which can introduce bias.
Oh, right. So they see the results, and then they're like, ooh, let me just tweak this to make it look a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though that's not how it's supposed to work.
Exactly. And they might have good intentions, but, it still biases the results.
Right, right. So even with the best intentions, researchers can still mess things up. So what can we do about it? Like, are there any safeguards or anything?
Well, one of the best ways is to make research more transparent.
Okay.
Like, if researchers share their data and their methods openly, then other people can look at it and, maybe try to replicate the study.
That makes sense. So more transparency would expose this kind of stuff. But what about, like, the bigger picture? Like, why are researchers doing this in the first place? Like, it seems like the system is kind of set up to encourage this kind of behavior.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of pressure to publish, especially in, like, really good journals.
Right. It's publish or perish.
Exactly.
So they feel like they have to cut corners or, do whatever they can to make their findings more interesting.
And that can lead to HARKing.
So it's not just, like, bad researchers. It's the whole system. So how do we change the system so that we reward good research?
Well, one thing we could do is, like, celebrate null findings.
No findings.
Yeah, like, not every study is going to be a breakthrough.
Right.
And that's okay. Studies that don't find anything can still be really valuable.
Right. It doesn't mean that they're bad studies.
Right. They can help us refine our theories and avoid going down the wrong path with our research.
Right. So it's about valuing the process of science and not just like the outcome.
Exactly. Like, science is a process of trial and error, and it's okay to make mistakes.
It's like you learn more from failing than succeeding sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, even if the results don't support the hypothesis, they can still be really important.
Right. They challenge your assumptions.
Exactly.
Wow, this whole discussion has really got me thinking about, like, how much of what we think we know is actually, like, true.
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like, how much of it is based on good research and how much is, like, arted?
Right.
And how do we know?
It is it's something we all need to be thinking about. Like, whether you're a scientist or a policymaker or just a regular person.
Right, because we all use research.
Exactly.
Because what's the takeaway? Like, how can we make sure that research is, like, actually good?
Well, the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Like, we need to realize that HARKing is a real problem and it can have real consequences.
And then we need to, like, change the system so that it doesn't reward bad research.
Right. We need to encourage researchers to be more transparent about their methods.
Yeah, and to share their data.
Right, and to replicate studies.
Okay, so that's all stuff that, like, researchers need to be doing. But what about the rest of us?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be, like, a good consumer of research.
Okay.
Like, don't just accept whatever you read.
Right.
Ask questions, like, think critically about the results, and be wary of stuff that just sounds too good to be true.
So be skeptical.
Yeah, basically.
All right. Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive, I think.
Yeah, it's a really important topic.
Yeah, it is. And it kind of makes you realize that even science can be biased.
Right.
Like, it's supposed to be objective, but it's not always.
Right. There's still human biases at play.
Yeah. And those biases can affect the research.
And it shows how important it is to be careful with how we do research.
Right. So next time you read about some new study, remember what we talked about today.
Yeah.
Like, is it good research or is it ARCAD?
Right.
And if you're a researcher, think about the responsibility that you have to do good research.
It's a shared responsibility.
Right. We all have to work together to make sure that research is reliable.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into HARKing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and let us know what you think. Have you encountered HR hacking? How can we make research better? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep thinking critically and happy researching.